everybody. Good morning. I would like to make this broadcast, or maybe start a tradition of broadcasts, about fundamental concepts about Israel, which contain a lot of disinformation, with regards to which there is tremendous amounts of disinformation. And this disinformation makes people see the reality about Israel in a deranged and incorrect manner, and this has implications for many things. So sometimes these are very easy things to explain, but there is a tremendous amount of widespread disinformation that create problems in the ways that the country is being seen. It's not just the country, it's the nation of Israel. So, first of all, the relationship between Israel and the land of Israel. So you see, the way many people see the current situation in Israel is as if there is a new country established only recently, 73 years ago, and the Jews came somehow to this land, remembered after 2,000 years to come back to the land of Israel, and established here a state on the ruins of a conquered Palestinian population. This is simply not true. It is a wrong narrative for many respects. First of all, people need to remember and need to know that the country of Israel, which was built 73 years ago, first of all, was built and reinstituted on the basis of an ongoing connection of the people of Israel to the land of Israel, since thousands of years. But not just this, it is continuous connection to the land of Israel during the whole 2,000 years since the destruction of the Second Temple and basically the exile, which was actually not just immediately after the destruction of the Second Temple, because the Jews, and until our days. This is a fact that must be understood. The central event of the destruction of the Second Temple caused the destruction of the autonomous and independent historical, let's say, state of Israel 2,000 years ago. But nevertheless, even though there was the Roman occupation and so on, which started a chain of different rulerships here in the state of Israel, in the land of Israel, Jews always lived here. It's not that Jews were scattered all over the world. When we say exile, we don't mean that the Jews were scattered all over the world and there were no Jews in the land of Israel. This is simply fabrication. This is not the historical facts. When we speak about exile, it means the destruction of the independent Jewish leadership in the land of Israel. However, from the exile and until our days, there were always Jews here, and in a substantial amount, even though that the different occupations, whether it is the Roman occupation, whether it is the Muslim occupation, whether it is the occupation of the church, even though it was virtually almost impossible, they made the lives of Jews almost impossible within the land of Israel, the situation was not that there were no Jews. You understand? This is a historical fabrication. If somebody thinks that within the land of Israel there was desolation, and then came the Palestinians and built and planted the olive trees for 2,000 years, and then the Jews 73 years ago somehow came back from Europe and built the land of Israel. This is simply a lie. This is simply a lie. There were Jews in the land of Israel, all over the land of Israel. In Tzfat, there were Jews in Hebron, there was Jews in Gaza. By the way, Gaza, which is today a Hamas stronghold. Hamas stronghold, a terror stronghold of Hamas, a radical, jihadi, radical terrorist group, was originally a Jewish, predominantly Jewish village. And like so, every city within the land of Israel that has historical existence was Jewish. Also cities which are currently considered Arab were always Jewish, and not Jewish historically for thousands of years, but ongoing during the 2,000 years since the destruction of the Second Temple until today. So this fabrication, as if one day in the 20th century came Jews from Europe, from Russia and so on, and occupied the land of Israel from the Arabs, is not a true story. Second of all, people need to understand that the Zionistic movement, which did occur in the 20th century because of the enablement of technology, of public transportation, planes, ships, the ability for agriculture, the ability to spread water, electricity, and so on. This was not a militant movement, because if you must understand that the establishment of the state of Israel was not a militant movement. Came many Jews to the land of Israel because of the enablement, the current enablement in the 20th century to do so, and they came back to their homeland. They came back to the homeland and built here cities, built from scratch. It's not that, you need to understand, Tel Aviv did not exist before the land of Israel. Cities like Petah Tikva, cities like Rishon LeZion, cities like Holon, cities like Kfar Saba, these are not occupied Arab villages. I don't know how many of you have been in the Middle East or have been in Israel, but you need to understand that this is basically a deserty place. It's not a place that is so easy to live in. And 100 years ago, before the establishment of the country of Israel, the majority of the area was uninhabited. Because every person knows that in order to live somewhere, you need to have water. You need to have water. Okay? So, if you don't have water, you cannot live. So the majority of the areas of Israel, aside from centers of population, were uninhabited because there was no water, for sure no electricity. So when the early Zionists came, they didn't come and occupy existing villages. They didn't come and occupy existing cities. Indeed, the amount of population here in the geographical region of the land of Israel was very sparse. There were religious centers in which Jews lived, like as I mentioned, in Hebron, in Jerusalem, and by the way, in Jerusalem was not always possible for Jews to live because of the occupation of the church and various foreign occupations. But aside from this, within the periphery within the land itself, there were Jewish areas in which Jews lived. There was some Arab villages, not a lot. Okay? And aside from this, the land was desolate because anywhere outside of a small region in which people could live centered around water, this was impossible to live. And even in my hometown, the hometown where I lived, the first thing, the early Zionistic settlers, it's not occupation. They came, and by the way, bought with full money the area in which they lived was complete sand. The only village that existed was in the radius of a few tens of kilometers in Yafo. And when they heard that people are going to settle there, they thought themselves suicidal because it was impossible. Sand and nothing else. And the first thing they needed to do was to dig wells in order to find water. And like so many of the villages within the land of Israel. Now, aside from this, the history of the Zionistic movement is non-violent. It was not a war, an occupation war in which Muslims or Palestinians and Jews fought one with the other. Absolutely not. During all the years before the establishment of Israel, from the, let's say, middle of the 19th century, the only thing that happened is that Jews immigrated to the land of Israel and built cities in their homeland, cities that did not exist before, in a peaceful manner. And by the way, most of the time, in cooperation with the local Arab population. With full cooperation, supplying work for them, and mainly supplying infrastructures that did not exist before. So the sparse Arab villages, not only they were not harmed, were offered flowing water, were offered works, were offered infrastructure, and at the end of the day, got a wide improvement in their quality of life. So from where came all this war? Came from warmongers. Mainly jihadi, fanatic warmongers. And from external sources. Because the first war that our region encountered, aside from terror attacks against the Zionistic movement, was the independence war. When the Arabs speak about occupation, when they speak about the Nakba, you need to understand that this is the event in which the United Nations legally declared Israel as an independent state. This independent state was established without any war. And the day after the state of Israel was acknowledged and accepted by the United Nations in the most legal and peaceful manner, the Arab militaries, not of Palestinians or whatever, of existing states from the surrounding area, attacked the state of Israel, which was at the time 1 day old. Jordan, Egypt, Syria, even Iraq, and other countries in the region attacked the state of Israel. It's not occupied Palestinians. It was militaries of organized state in a declaration of war. And sadly for them, Israel was not only not obliterated, but came out victorious in this war. And as a result, earned territories which were originally not designated to it in the original UN vote. That's all. So during all the time of the Zionistic movement, in its original plan, or in its original natural state of development, it was a peaceful movement, not designated to make any war with the Arabs. On the contrary, all Zionistic leaders spoke clearly and favorably in favor of complete cooperation with the Arab population in a peaceful manner. That was always the original intention of the establishment of the state as a democratic state, and it is so until today. And it is so until today. The only acts of violence documented in the history before of the establishment of the State of Israel, before the establishment of the state, before the UN resolution, were, first of all, terror attacks against the state led by radical Muslim or nationalistic Arabs against civil population, mainly originating from Jordan, and the famous rampages of the Muslim population, which are called the Tarpat events, which originated from religious issues. Weirdly so, it originated from confrontations about the Wailing Wall, the prayer in the Wailing Wall, which sparked horrific acts of violence from Arab mob towards Jews. They killed many Jews in this time, and it was a horrendous act of slaughter. But it was spelled. Its origin was not territorial. It was religious, and there are many things to say about this issue. Not really religious, because of course a religious person would not do something like this. Now, let's continue a bit more. The idea that the state of Israel is a new thing is a false idea. It's a false idea. Because every person that knows anything about Judaism knows that the central pillar of faith within Judaism is the land of Israel. It is the object of the prayer of Jews 3 times in a day. Is centered around Jerusalem. It is centered around Israel. Simply, even Jews that live outside of Israel, when they pray to the direction of Jerusalem. They pray to the direction of Israel. And the thing is that this was well known to all countries and all cultures in the world. It was not as if at any point it was a mystery that the Jews will come back to the land of Israel. No. There were 2,000 years of violent occupations which did not enable Jews to come back to the land. And by the way, the Jews refused to establish militaries and try to conquer by themselves the land by force. Because this is not the way of Judaism. It's simply not the way of Judaism. It was possible. Jews could have easily done so. But it would have been missing the whole point of coming back to the land. Doing so without bloodshed, or with the minimal amount of bloodshed directed only against terrorists and really the worst warmongers in the world. But the fact that all Jews wished to come back to the land of Israel was no mystery. It was known since thousands of years. Declared clearly. declared clearly, and there is no religion in the world that attributes such importance to its homeland. When people say Jerusalem is holy to all religions, and to Christianity, and to Islam, this is a fabrication of the real proportion of the truth. Because to equate the amount of holiness and importance and connection the Jewish relates towards the land of the Jewish religion relates towards the land of Israel, and the way it is of importance to Christianity and to Islam is simply ridiculous. It's unfair. It's untrue. Second issue. In the past, it was voiced the idea or the concept that Judaism is, God forbid, racist. It was a UN discussion on whether Zionism is racist. This is the most vile and the most evil fabrication anybody can come up with. It is simply something that can only be suggested to somebody that is completely unaware of the true matter and is completely unaware of the truth with respect to the subject. It's this information that could only be spread on the basis of complete unfamiliarity with the issue. First of all, Judaism is completely non-racistic belief. It is against racism. Racism is heretic against Judaism, is heresy in Judaism. Judaism renounces any type of racism. And in fact, any persons that would come to the land of Israel would see that there are Jews of any race. There are Jews which are white, there are Jews which are black, there are Jews which are from Asia, there are Jews from all over the world. For the simple reason that Judaism is simply not racist. And not only so, Judaism it has aspects of faith which are universal, meaning even for non-Jews. So what is this talk about Jews being the chosen people, about Judaism being for the chosen people, that there is Jews and non-Jews and so on? You need to understand that, first of all, Judaism is not a race. It's not a race. It's not an ethnic group. It is a religious group. A religious national group. It is a nation. And you can be admitted into this nation in two ways. First of all, you can be born Jewish. If you are born Jewish, then you are Jewish. But the second way to become Jewish is the second way. And that is to become Jewish. So Judaism is not a closed club. There are two ways to become Jewish, and therefore it is not like a race, that you are born, either you are born black or white, or you are born Asian, or you are born Latin American, and that is the way you are born, will never change. This is not so. You cannot claim that a certain club is racist if it admits you in, if it offers you the ability to come into the club, first of all. So in this sense, of course, Judaism is not racist because it has built in the ability for any person who wishes to become Jewish. By the way, even in our broadcast, there are people that comment and send us messages. I live in this place in the world. I live in this region in Africa, or in this region in Asia. I want to become Jewish. Please, do you know how this can be done? And this was so for all throughout history. Some of our greatest rabbis became Jewish in such a way. Onkelos, the translator of the Torah, was Jewish on this side. The translator to Aramaic. Rabbi Akiva, which is the greatest rabbi of all, maybe of all times, was not originally Jew. So the idea that Judaism is somehow a seclusive, racial, supremacy group is simply true. It's simply not true. It's simply not true. It can only be based on this information. It is a nation. A nation and a religious faith which holds itself as an important faith, but the different individuals that comprise it, that make it, are very, very varied. Aside from this, Judaism does not see itself as superior to anything, to other nations. The truth is that the term chosen people does not refer to chosen people in the sense of superiority, God forbid. God forbid. It means that the Jewish faith sees itself as an important role in channeling a certain universal message, which is actually, as the name suggests, universal. So, out of importance and equality amongst all humanity. This universal message was very, very, very complicated to channel properly in ancient times, and actually, to a certain extent, until our times. It was almost impossible to purely deliver such a message in a non-deranged channels to communicate it until our time. Because it would have been deranged through the way. But it means universal message. It means that contrary to what people think, the Jewish religion in matters of faith, in matters of belief, in matters of spirituality, is not seclusive just for Jews. There are fundamental aspects of Judaism which are universal, which are directed towards any person that wishes to have faith in God. Okay? Not out of imposing, not out of telling anybody what to do this, don't do this, have relationship with this person or with that person. Absolutely not. It does not come to impose anything on anybody when it comes to the universal message. But the faith of Judaism is that the faith in God is directed towards any individual from within humanity. And this is contrary to what people think, that Judaism is directed strictly to Jews. This is not the truth. And this has been so since the days of the prophets. The prophets of Israel absolutely went to other nations and tried to communicate to them this message. Much before Christianity and much before Islam. Okay? And this means a religion with no war, with no crusades, with no jihad, and with no violence, and also without telling any person what to do in his personal life. But rather to try to communicate pure spiritual faith in God to anybody who wishes. That was the original goal of Judaism. And this goal was deranged through the establishment of, let's say, artificial religions, which developed around Judaism and missed the point. And simply missed the point. They built institutions and intermingled the pure religious message with all sorts of things that do not belong to it. Things that are far lower. And like so came concepts of jihad and crusades into the world, which are absolutely not related to Judaism and not related to this universal message, and brought much suffering to the world. Until that today, many people think that religion was the source of maybe a big proportion of the historical suffering of people. But this is only because this is not what people associate with religion. It's not what religion should have been. It is not pure religion. It is altered religion. Because to a large extent, all the good things that the different religions took, that the different religions have, like faith in God, like the importance of family, like the importance of good deeds and so on, they did took from Judaism. But all the bad things were not taken from us. Were not approved, let's say, of by Judaism. The ideas like jihad, like crusades, like telling people what they should do in their personal lives and so on. This does not really belong to Judaism in such a manner, in truth. Now, it's not to say that Judaism does set apart different people. It does set apart Jews from non-Jews. But not in terms of high, let's say, discrimination in importance. God forbid. But in terms of responsibility. In terms of responsibility, in terms of the religious obligations that the Jewish religion attributes to somebody that is associated with the Jewish nation, the amount of obligations is far bigger. In terms that for Jews, the Jewish religion does tell people that there are things that they should know, but not universal. That is one of the differences. Now, the point is that these things seem maybe like small nuances, but they are not. They are of huge importance to see the things properly, in the correct manner, to understand that Judaism has an ongoing connection with the land of Israel, physical and spiritual. Physical and spiritual for the last 2,000 years. But the land of Israel and Zionism did not come out of the blue, out of the void. That they absolutely did not come out of nowhere. They were part of an ongoing Zionistic faith and belief during the 2,000 years since the destruction of the temple, and actually there were Zionistic movements all throughout these 2,000 years, directed towards re-establishing an independent Jewish life in the land of Israel. It was all the time there. And second of all, to understand that Judaism is not a racist or seclusive faith, not at all. It is a universal message. By the way, this is one of the reasons for the wide anti-Semitism that Christianity and Islam share towards Judaism. Because one of the dynamics that occurred all throughout the history is that in every place in which these doctrines existed, meaning the Christian church and the Muslim faith, what happened is that many people that began as Muslims or began as priests, a certain percentage of them, always, all throughout history, understood that Christianity and Islam is based on Judaism. They understood it. It happened everywhere. And as a result, they started becoming Jewish. Think about this such a situation. There is a certain monastery, and within this monastery there sit priests studying the Bible, and a certain group of these priests start understanding that the Bible was taken from the Jews. And they by themselves want to become Jewish. Do you think the Christian church would accept something like that? And they start reading by a religion based on political decrees, like Christianity and Islam. Religions came from. And this stirred a lot of political imbalance. And as a result of this, as a byproduct, these religions, in order to keep their grasp, their political grasp and their political power, and to sustain the artificial religions, develop anti-Semitism toward Judaism, towards their own root, in order to continue to religiously dominate the population in which they were dominated, whether it be Islam or whether it be Christianity. Because these religions knew and know until today that they are trying to inherit something that they are not really qualified to inherit. So all around Europe and all around the Muslim countries, there were always Muslims and Christians converting to Judaism. And it happened so organically. So somebody thinks that Judaism will just disappear from the world if the land of Israel would be destroyed or the country of Israel would be destroyed. It's not so. Judaism will always exist as long as there is people. As long as there is humanity. Because the religious faith is a need of humanity. It's a basic need of humanity. Some people simply need it, like other people need water, like other people need food, like some people need music, or some people need culture, or some people need entertainment. The need for religion is an inherent need within humanity. It's part of the culture of humanity. It's part of psychological and internal needs of humans. And at the end of the day, as long as there is people, there will always be Jews. Because from Christianity and Islam, people will always come to Judaism. And like so, many of the percentage of Jews today actually became Jews in such a manner. Their forefathers were originally maybe Christians or maybe originally Muslim and converted to Judaism in the regions where they lived. Who knows what percentage of this population is? It's not possible to trace it back, but it is for sure some percent. So you see, Judaism is not racist at all. that came here as Jews to reinstitute the land of Israel are not a creed. They are not a race. They are a collection of people from within humanity. Some of them may be Jews from the time of King David, but not all. These are parts from within humanity that joined the Jewish faith in all sorts of manners. So it cannot be racist. It is a wish from within humanity to create a state, as a Jewish state, and as a spiritual, religious wish from within humanity. You understand what I'm saying? The immigrants that came here from Russia inspired to build the Jewish state are not some race of Jews that waited since the days of King of the Roman Empire and came to conquer it from the Goy Gentile Arabs. This is fabrication. This is silly. This is childish understanding. During these 2,000 years, many of the Jews that joined the Jewish people done so through conversion. Maybe a Jewish girl fell in love with a non-Jewish boy, or vice versa, and they converted. And they came to be Jewish. You understand? When you put into the equation the fact that conversion exists, you understand the Jewish nation in a completely different manner. So the fact that thousands and millions of people came here as Jews to establish a Jewish state is a wonder, is a miracle. But it is because these people came together into the Jewish nation from all corners of the world and expressed the faith to re-establish something which is biblical. This looks very different than the simplistic views that people have about it. And by the way, until today, in the land of Israel, you can see this. If you see the people that immigrated into here, it's a very varied tapestry of people with very different spectrum along their association with Judaism and with the Jewish religion. For instance, the Russian immigration of a few years ago. It's very non-homogeneous. Some of them a large population of them is clearly Jewish. Some of them are family members. Some of them are related to Judaism through all sorts of relations and family relations. But at the end of the day, this is the way the Jewish nation is. That's the beauty about it. Absolutely non-racist and absolutely universal. And in this sense, the world needs to understand that by enabling the existence of the Jewish independence within the Holy Land of Israel, which is holy for the Jews, the world is enabling a religious need of within humanity to fulfill something that is biblical. And without bringing harmony to these needs, the world suffers. It's very simple. So thank you very much for listening, and good morning to everybody. Have a nice day.